Hello and welcome to the Story Engine podcast. My name is Kyle Gray, and today on the show we have Alexus Rae Lopez. Alexus is a master NLP practitioner who helps high-achieving women get out of their own way and their own roadblocks. Today we're going to be talking about what those kind of roadblocks are, what they feel like in our lives, where they come from, and what we can do about it other than just endless talk therapy and dredging up the same painful challenges time and time again. So we've got a beautiful story to uncover, so let's hand it over to Alexus Rae Lopez. Alexus Rae, welcome to the Story Engine podcast.
Thank you, Kyle. I am so excited to be here today.
I am excited to have you. You work on concepts and things that are near and dear to my heart, and I'm excited to share your brilliance with the audience today. And to start things off, I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about who you are and how you're showing up in the world today.
With pleasure. Who I am, as you said, I'm Alexus Rae, and I currently reside in Prescott, Arizona. My fiance and I just moved up here in December. Originally, Kyle, I was a Colorado native, born and raised there, and one of those natives that hates the cold. So in 2022, I moved out to Arizona and then met my now fiance about a year later. And in this time, I've been developing my coaching program, my coaching practice. So how I show up in the world now is with joy and pleasure to say as my highest self. I get to live as my best self, this dream life that I've been creating for the last couple of years. And what that looks like in my day-to-day, Kyle, is working with other women entrepreneurs, females that are well into their professional career, that are just looking to move any roadblocks that are out of the way. So really, I help women identify and release deep emotional roadblocks and patterns that are keeping them stuck.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to somebody being in one of these, like we're well entrenched in our career, what are some of the symptoms of roadblocks like this? How do we know we're experiencing roadblocks? I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the feeling of them, but I'm sure the symptoms might vary from person to person. What does it look like in your experience?
Roadblocks are the funnest things to run into because I like to think of them as opportunities for growth or just an opportunity to find another way. And so depending on where you're at in your career, maybe you're feeling a little bit of pain in your relationship and it feels like, oh, I'm just not totally clear on where this relationship is going, or it's not functioning at its optimum magnitude because I really don't have the capacity to pour into it the way that I want to. Maybe also if you're at a point in your career where you're performing high, but you're tired constantly, your body seems to be shutting down, you're sick after a launch and it was your biggest and best launch ever, and then you have this come down with your body where it just doesn't seem to be supporting the highest version of yourself. That can be another symptom of maybe it's in your relationship, maybe it's in your body, your wellness. Maybe it has to do with family. So to answer your question, what's the symptom that each person is experiencing? Like you said, it's going to be unique to them. I like to break it down to kind of higher level if we were going to chunk up. If you're feeling like you don't have clarity on what you want to do next or where you're going, if you feel like you can't actually make a decision on what that was, even if you knew what it was going to be, and if you're just not even sure if it's time to make a change, but you know doing things the way you're doing them is no longer going to take you to where you want to go, that's probably the highest level summary of some of the symptoms of what my clients are experiencing across the various areas of their life.
Mm-hmm. So these are problems that are very, very common for people achieving at the highest levels. And I like what you say about roadblocks, opportunities for growth. And it's almost inevitable if you want to set out on this journey to do hard things, to create success, no matter how you measure that or see that. Roadblocks are almost guaranteed to come up in the way. And what do you What do these roadblocks really mean or look like, or how do they exist for people? Like we've kind of gone through the symptoms. What are the root causes underneath a lot of these problems?
Yeah. So to get under these problems, I might start taking a little bit of a scientific explanation. And just before I break all of that down for you, Kyle, I like to think of it as we hop in our car first thing in the morning. We're on our way to an appointment, whether you're driving to work or you're taking your kids to school, and you decide, oh, I have a little extra time. I'm going to stop off at Starbucks. So you pick up your Starbucks, you take a little detour on your route, you get back on the road, and now you're driving down the road and your GPS says turn left, and you're too busy listening to your favorite song in the morning and you miss that left turn. And you keep driving down the road, and eventually you hit a point where now you ran into construction, which is why your GPS was telling you to turn left, 3 miles ago. And while you missed that turn and maybe you just ran into a bit of a roadblock where you are, the underlying root cause of all of this is that we just need to find the next right path for you. Because no matter where you're going and where you want to be or whatever path you've been on, you get to choose the path that you take next. And so, from a scientific perspective, what I do with my clients, incorporating neurolinguistic programming, mental and emotional release, and hypnosis, is we clear out those detours or those construction zones that our system has been running, the patterns that our system has been running for a long time, so that you can then take just an easy, clear path to where you want to go with no distractions, with no derailment, with no construction zones.
Mm-hmm.
And more than that, on the deepest level of it all, our programmings, our behaviors, our perspectives, our beliefs, our values, all of those are stored on the unconscious level. And so, whether something happened to you when you were 7, your system is probably still running an old version of that story. So, on the deepest levels, what I help my clients do is identify all the presenting problems in their life. Maybe it's, oh, I'm procrastinating on something, or I can't make the healthy food decisions that I want to be making so that I can fuel my body and show up as my best self for work. We take a look at each one of these presenting problems, Kyle, and then we find the root cause, the greatest problem, which is the thread that's tying all of these presenting problems together so that we can, on the deepest level of your unconscious mind, release that greater problem, clear the roadway so that you have an easy path to get to where you want to go.
So you mentioned that some of these things may have happened when we were 7, maybe younger, maybe a little bit older. How did these things, like for the really practical people out there, how does something that happens to me in early childhood and now that how does it affect me in ways? How does it lead to procrastination or poor food choices? What's the link between these two things that I can really see, like, oh, this is what's happening to me, to really drive home why this is valuable?
Absolutely. And this is such an important question because I know that if you listening to me say, okay, this is something from when I was a kid, I also used to think like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so as you keep listening, just knowing that from 0 to 7, some science books, research might say 0 to 12, we all know that we have an imprinting phase. When we're children, we're taking in everything around us and we're beginning to model that. So your unconscious mind is kind of like a librarian, and it's storing anything and everything you've experienced throughout your entire life. And every second, Kyle, we're actually taking in 2 million bits of information that your unconscious mind is then sorting through. And it goes through a whole process of sorting in order to get that 2 million bits of information down to something that we can consciously process and understand. And throughout that process of simplifying things to allow our conscious mind to perceive what's happening around us, There was an event in that imprinting phase. I'm going to use my hands because whoever's maybe watching this will see. There was an event that happened, and your unconscious mind did its job. It fulfilled its role of taking a lesson from that event and also wrapping a charge, like an emotional charge around that event. And that emotional charge then becomes what your unconscious mind recognizes as being familiar. So let's say you were in, actually, I can even say I was in first grade. I remember being in a reading circle. And at that point in time, the way I had learned how to read, Kyle, wasn't exactly phonetic. I had learned how to read through memorization. And so by the time my teacher would call on me and it was my turn to read, I could read pretty well. But anytime I came across a new word that I didn't recognize, I would get nervous. I would panic because I couldn't actually read the word. Eventually, thank goodness, I got some additional tutoring. I learned how to read phonetically so that I could sound things out. But that being at such a young age impacted the impression that my unconscious mind took from, oh man, I'm not smart. I'm not as good at this as other people. So going back to the event that your unconscious mind wrapped a charge around, there's a lesson and a learning in there. And through the filtering process that I mentioned, going from 2 million bits of information down to 126 bits of information, Kyle, our unconscious mind has to generalize things. So if we have an experience when we're 20 that's different yet similar enough to being in first grade and being called on and not being able to read that word, our unconscious mind, because it's generalized, because it's so close, is going to trigger that same memory, that same lesson, that same charge that happened in our imprinting phase. And so while our unconscious mind is generalizing when we're well into our 30s, our 40s, our 50s, those imprints of what originally we're going back to happened when we were somewhere between 0 to 7 years old.
Mm-hmm. And what about this process is different or better? Not necessarily the outcomes that we get, because it sounds like the outcome is we remove our roadblocks, we're living in alignment, which means life is easier, not necessarily because there's less pain or challenges, but because we have the tools to know how to navigate and recalibrate. But what's the benefit in how we get there that is better than therapy or any of the other options that might be out there available to us?
Such an important consideration for anyone that's looking to take the next step in their personal potential, because there is a place, Kyle, for therapy. There's a certain amount of emotional processing sometimes of the past that we need to do in order to be at a point now where we are totally ready to move forward. And so if the traditional path has gotten you to the point where you are now and you're considering what's the next best thing, because I feel like I've talked it out. I feel like I've looked at it of every angle. I've worked on forgiveness. I've worked on all of these things that tend to be the traditional path. And yet I'm still running into my same old patterns, my same old thoughts and ways of thinking. Then it's likely that an adjustment on the unconscious level is what's going to support you in really creating the outcomes that you're looking for. So what I do is considered an alternative therapy. It's a support of what traditional therapies would be. And what makes NLP and MER specifically so useful, Kyle, is that while we get in touch with the charge of the emotions from those root causes, we're not reliving anything. We're not drawing up the old traumas. We're not having to dive deep into what happened, who did it, when it happened. We're just getting in touch with the emotions so that your unconscious mind knows exactly what we're releasing. We go back to the root cause in a way that we don't relive it, so that then we can move past everything that you've done your work on to process and to be at the point of, man, I'm just really ready to let this go.
So, let me read back a couple of the things that I've just heard and gathered, like the problems that a lot of your women, high achieving women, are facing right now. It sounds like they have lost a flavor of life. And they know that they want to change, but they just don't know what to change or how. It's hard to make the right decisions and I think one of the big reasons is because it's tough. You don't know what you really want. It sounds like they're having a hard time distinguishing from this emotionally charged voice and their true higher self. And there's this kind of thing that just causes hesitation. And it shows up as pain in a relationship, maybe being with the wrong person, or maybe not being able to pour into the right person in the way that you want because of work. You're at work, you're performing high and you've made it to a certain level, but you have crashes, anxiety and fatigue, and the success that you set out to create doesn't really have any flavor. And you might, have problems taking care of your own health or your own self or in other ways. And maybe you're the last one you ever take care of in this. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's definitely on track. And as you were sharing that, another kind of version popped in my head, if that's okay with you to share with you as well. This isn't just for women running into a roadblock. It also can be, man, I know clarity on exactly what I want and I know how I want to show up. And no matter how much nervous system regulation I'm doing, no matter how many mindset books I read, the application just really isn't coming through. And so while I'm doing the things, it feels like I'm having to fake it, or it feels like I'm having to perform my way through life, as opposed to just knowing and feeling on all levels of yourself that you're doing the damn thing.
Yeah. Curious. That was beautifully articulated and very specific. And I'm curious if there was a time in your life where you felt this, where you felt like I've tried all of the things, but nothing seems to be working for me. And you just had a feeling of non-safety in yourself.
Yeah, that's such a good phrase to put it, non-safety. You nailed it there.
Thank you.
And I would say prior to starting to experience my own breakthrough sessions, Kyle, I was very familiar with just showing up and doing it anyways, doing it despite how I felt inside. And that was coming off of a 11-year career in the commercial construction industry. I was in commercial roofing, and then I moved into high ticket sales. And while I was not unfamiliar with doing sales of large quantities, large projects in my past, it was a little different in high ticket sales, sitting across Zoom, similar to how you and I are sitting here now, having a conversation with someone, and in 75 minutes helping them see why this opportunity was the one that they were ready to explore. Meeting with CEOs day after day, helping them understand that the systems we were going to put in place with them in their business was going to allow them to scale to 8 figures, 9 figures. I was sitting there wanting to believe this for them, knowing that the product could work, but I didn't really believe in myself on the other side. And it took a mentor of mine, a sales mentor of mine, holding the mirror up to my face and saying, "My experience of you is that you do not believe you are worthy." And meanwhile, all I was trying to do was allow myself to believe that I was worthy. That was about 2 months before I went and received my master practitioner certification, and I got to experience my first breakthrough session. And after that breakthrough session, which is what I do with my clients now, was when I was able to say, okay, I'm stepping into the full embodiment of myself. I feel safe in who I am and what I'm doing. And I can absolutely believe 100% in my worth in helping other people now too.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like there was a specific interaction that you maybe are referring to or remember with CEOs daily, maybe a Zoom in your office, and trying to force this to happen and just having an experience of it not. Can you describe, there's like a specific Tuesday morning or afternoon that you can picture this happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it was much of the spring of my first year being in this role. So I had come out swinging, had a great first 30 days, actually broke two company records in my first 30 days. And then I went into the dreaded sales slump that many people talk about, the backslide. And it was maybe in that time that I really was just like, man, what am I doing here? Like, I jumped off the deep end into this 100% commission role after years of safety, right, with a salary position, or even just being in a position with a corporation when you have a base salary and a commission structure on top of that, that can feel kind of nice. Trying to think what the specific morning was.
What did your office look like?
Yeah, great. Okay, so my office at the time was actually in just a little cubby of my bedroom. So I was working out of my one bedroom in a two-bedroom apartment with my roommate across the hall. And in this corner, I had some shelves, a little different than how it's set up currently, and a picture in the middle. So over to the right was my bed, and along the wall was my desk.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a good relationship with this sales mentor?
Yeah, she was great. Being in her program definitely changed my life for the better.
Was it a breakthrough session that this person offered you?
No, so in her own way, she's trauma trained, and so on Mondays she does a mindset call specifically for her higher tier program. And so I was on that call. We were in basically a trauma circle where we share our experiences of each other, and it's really just to cut through all the BS that we sometimes feed ourselves. So, in her own way, in the version of that program, yes, it could be considered a breakthrough, I would think.
Great. Okay. Um, now let's hear a moment after you're offering breakthrough sessions, you're living in alignment, you have clarity on what you want. It's probably by the time you move to Arizona, you've met your fiance, and there was maybe a moment of, wow, I've really made it. I can't believe how far I've come.
Yeah. Whew. That moment for me, Kyle, came when I realized that there was no more chatter in my head. And what I mean by that is sometimes when we are wanting to show up, we are wanting to do the things, we might have a little voice in the back of our head going at the same time. Like, okay, yeah, girl, we're going to show up. And then you have that first conversation, and that little voice is maybe thinking, oh, what should I say? Or the conversation ends and it replays in your mind over and over again. Oh, you should have said this different, or you should have done this different. And the moment came for me when I realized that the chatter was gone, and that I just got to be fully present, and I just got to know that anything and everything that I was doing was from a complete place of trust in who I am and what I'm doing now.
Where were you though?
Yeah.
Were you having a coffee and it was like 9:30 and you were like, dang, that's nice. I would usually be at my desk by now, but I trust this process.
Yeah, you're not far off. It actually came after I left my last high ticket sales role. Before I just stepped fully into my practice, I was taking about 3 weeks off between closing out that position and starting to work on my book. And it was in those 3 weeks of rest when I realized, oh my goodness, I don't feel an overwhelming amount of anxiety or pull. Like, obviously I was motivated, but I also knew I needed some downtime. So it was in that period of time of pausing between projects, of saying, oh, this is what I've been working towards.
Were you staying at home or did you go somewhere else through these 3 weeks?
I was home. Yep, I was home. We had actually just moved to Prescott, so I was chilling on our brand new couch that had just got delivered in our beautiful living room. I was waking up, doing my morning ritual of reading in the morning and journaling and getting to really sleep in. And actually, Kyle, as you've continued to ask these questions, I'm really remembering the moment. So amazing job taking me back here. I woke up one day with no alarm, and the thought that went through my mind was, the only thing I have to do today is be beautiful. And that was a big moment.
Awesome. Would you like to hear your story?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
You should have done this different. That phrase would echo in my head time and time again. And no matter what I did, that voice would appear. You should have done this different. I was a short time into leaving a very successful career in construction, commercial construction. And while the job was making me good money, I knew that I was out of alignment with myself and wanted to try something that would allow me to enjoy my life and create the life that I wanted. I moved into high ticket sales. This was something I knew how to do. I'd been doing sales for a long time and had lots of experience on it. But there was something different in this. It wasn't quite the same thing selling roofing as trying to sell myself as a solution, as a high ticket offer. And I could see myself on so many Zoom calls every morning in my own little office, working out of the cubby corner in my bedroom. I could see my roommate across the hall and these little shelves set up, trying to make myself look as professional and be as professional as I wanted the world to see me. And day after day, meeting with CEOs, trying to get them to want to believe in this, to want themselves for them. And thinking to myself throughout this whole call and feeling a tension in my body, what should I say? How do I get them to buy? And time after time again, getting, no thanks, not now. I don't know what has happened. My first 30 days, I was crushing it. I was killing it. I had energy. And now things have totally slowed down. And I just keep thinking to myself, you should have done this different. On a sales call with one of my mentors in the company, I was sharing my problem, sharing my challenge that I found myself going. I shared, why did I leave the safety of my job just to be thrown into this crazier, harder situation? And after a few questions and just a little bit of dialogue, my sales mentor quiets down and looks right at me and says, you don't believe you're worthy. You're trying to sell something that you don't believe you're worthy of, and it's causing you all these challenges. And it hit me like a bag of bricks. It was true. This feeling of unworthiness was breaking and challenging every one of my calls. And the strange thing is now that she pointed this out, I felt this unworthiness for a long time. And this lack of safety wasn't something new either. It had been with me almost every single day in my corporate job. I could feel it in my relationships. I could feel it in the quiet hours at home after a hard day or an easy day, after a win or a loss. The same feeling, you should have done things different, was always weighing on me. Despite my experience, my talents, my skill sets, no matter what I was doing in the outside world, this inside voice was still there with me. And I knew that something needed to change. I wanted to find a clear path to understanding who I was and where I wanted to go so I could get out of my own way. I didn't want to spend hours reliving and digging up old traumas and old experiences in talk therapy and just making myself feel even worse than I did. I wanted something that was aligned with my nature, my perspectives, and my values. And I started to put together many different tools, not tactical ones, but ones that would go deeper. And after the course of a few years of many different kinds of trainings and certifications, I started to put together this system to take care of me, to change the emotional charge which had been driving everything I was doing and allow grace and freedom and ease. This would take a long time, but I remember after finishing putting together many certifications, many tools, and many trainings, and leaving that sales job, I took a few weeks off to give myself space and safety. The money wasn't perfectly there, but I knew that I was worthy of this. And I can remember waking up one morning, no alarm, and saying to myself, the only thing I have to do today is be beautiful. I'd stepped into a relationship that I was excited for. We had just moved into a home, and I was finally able to give myself a rest. Rest I had never known or experienced in almost 2 decades of working hard every single day. And I realized that the tools and the process that I had gone through to take care of myself in this could help so many other women. I began to think of all of the high achieving women that were in the same space as me, the same challenge, and thinking how much they were missing out on from their own lives, from their own experiences, and from who they could impact, and how it was just within their reach. I began excitedly writing a book, building a process, and creating what I am going to share with you today. Nice.
So good. Chills multiple times as you were sharing that. Thank you, Kyle.
Absolutely. It's kind of a reverse application of the NLP process.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved it. And just like the few sentences that you extracted out so clearly, the worth, the opening, I should have done this differently. Wow, that really landed. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Absolutely. And now, do you have any closing thoughts for us today? And where can we go to learn more about you, join the wait list, or grab the book? And yeah.
Absolutely. Closing thoughts. I mean, if they haven't talked to you and they have a story to get out there, that's closing thought number one. And if you'd like to connect with me to get your mental and emotional baggage out of the way so that you can call Kyle to work with him, you can find me on Instagram, Alexus, Alexus, 2_. Rae, RAE, 2_. And in my bio on my Instagram is where you'll find the list for my early access to the book. That's going to be coming out this fall, Evolving You. And you can also find the application for a breakthrough session there as well.
Alexus Rae, thank you so much for joining us today on the Story Engine podcast.
Thanks, Kyle.